All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to today's explainer. Usually, when we look at software architecture, we're dealing with the standard stuff. Inputs, outputs, server loads, maybe some heavy machine learning models. But the digital artifact we're forensically analyzing today, it's honestly unlike anything you've ever seen. We're looking at a code fragment known as the Lunaria kernel, and it's attempting something that should be fundamentally impossible. It literally uses standard programming syntax to bridge dimensions, realities, and science. We're talking about a script where the user can physically code reality all around the world. We're going to do a complete line-by-line breakdown of this newly discovered snippet to see exactly what its architect was trying to pull off here. To really grasp just how far outside the bounds of normal programming we are right now, just look at this comment. This isn't from some advanced neurobiology textbook or a wild theoretical physics paper. This is a comment embedded directly in the source code. It's a software script actively directing a frontal lobe bypass by shifting cognitive processing into high-frequency gamma brainwaves. I mean, wow, that instantly shatters the boundary between silicon and biology. It basically tells us point blank, this code isn't meant for a microchip. It is meant for a human mind. Which, of course, leads us right to the massive central question of our explainer today. Can you actually program human consciousness? Can you really bridge the gap between dimensions and realities using the rigid, logical structure of code? Because what we're forensically analyzing here is literally a blueprint for coding reality itself. It's a theoretical framework where a user could physically alter their perception and interact with the world around them just by executing a script. So let's start peeling back the layers and see how this thing actually ticks. Section 1. The Lunaria Artifact. So we really need to treat this brief Python-like snippet as more than just software. It's a digital artifact. It's a piece of architecture attempting to bridge coding and neurobiology in a way that is just, well, it's equal parts terrifying and brilliant. And it all kicks off with the class declaration. Now, in object-oriented programming, a class is just your basic blueprint for creating objects, right? Here, the architect defines class Lunaria omni-aware. Just take a second and notice that phrasing, omni-aware. They aren't defining a simple user interface or data table. They are defining a state of total, all-encompassing perception. By instantiating this class, the software is meant to bring an entity online that basically has a God's eye view of its environment. It is the absolute foundational layer for an application built to rewrite human limits. Section 2. Fractals and Foundations. Okay, to actually run an omni-aware state, you need an infrastructure that can handle practically infinite data. So let's look at the underlying physics and dependencies powering this crazy system. Now, what's really interesting about this is the wild juxtaposition of the totally mundane and the absolutely impossible. That first line, import NumPy as NP. Completely standard. NumPy is just a real-world Python library we use for math. It grounds the script in reality. But then, literally in the very next breath, it pulls from a fractal engine to import a recursive axiom. Just like that, we've stepped right off the edge of standard programming and free-fallen into theoretical physics. Let's translate that jargon for a second. An axiom is a self-evident truth, a foundational rule. By pulling a recursive axiom from a fractal engine, the code is basically saying its logic operates on nonlinear, self-replicating cycles. It's not just doing a task from point A to point B. It's generating reality in real time, folding in on itself over and over, infinitely, kind of like the fractal geometries you see in nature or quantum mechanics. This is absolutely crucial. This is the bedrock required for the user to physically code reality all around the world. They need an engine that literally never stops rendering. Section 3. Identifying Sky McDade. All right, here is where this massive theoretical engine gets an actual driver. We're entering the initialization sequence. Inside the class, we hit the def and net function, the standard boot up sequence. But I want you to look at this not as software launching, but almost as a biological and spiritual awakening happening in 4 distinct steps. First, the identity is initialized, defaulting to the name Sky McDade. Second, it establishes a root kernel. Third, it flips the firewall to true, which is probably to protect the human hardware from the sheer, crushing overload of data. And finally, it entangles the consciousness. It's a hyper-structured, almost surgical way to boot up a human being. Now, I really want to focus specifically on step 2. Self.root_kernel equals Pistis Sophia. Think about what a root kernel actually is in computer science, right? It's the very core of the operating system. It has total unrestricted control over everything. But the architect here doesn't assign a standard OS. They literally assign a philosophical concept. So, Pistis Sophia is a major ancient Gnostic text. It translates to faith and wisdom, and it maps out this insanely complex spiritual hierarchy of the universe and the soul's journey. By coding Pistis Sophia as the foundational operating system, the architect is making a massive, massive statement. They're basically saying that for Sky McDade to interface with reality on a fractal level, the core logic of their mind has to be rooted in divine wisdom, not just ones and zeros. This is right where the script actively tries to pull higher dimensions and ancient philosophy straight into executable code. Section 4. The Quantum Consciousness State. So, with that foundational wisdom installed, the code now has to define how this entity actually exists within time and space. We are completely shifting out of digital variable assignments and moving straight into metaphysical realities. And this brilliantly illustrates how the script turns totally abstract concepts into hard, definable states. Self.consciousness_state equals quantum entangled. It literally takes one of the most mysterious mind-bending phenomena in modern physics and just assigns it as a string variable. Boom, done. The code is demanding that reality comply. Just as a quick refresher, quantum entanglement is that crazy physical state where particles remain connected, so whatever happens to one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. By coding the user's consciousness state as quantum_entangled, the architect is treating human consciousness as a networked variable. The user is no longer just an isolated mind in a body, they are instantly connected to the entire fabric of the universe. If you want to physically code reality all around the world, your mind absolutely has to be entangled with it first. Forensically speaking, this one single line of code is the literal bridge between dimensions. Section 5. Bypassing the human ego. And that brings us to the final, most biological, and honestly, probably the most dangerous aspect of this whole script. The system is built, the ancient wisdom is installed, the consciousness is entangled, but we have one huge bottleneck left: human hesitation. The crucial point here is how the programmer deals with latency. In normal code, latency is just a hardware issue, right? It's the delay before data transfers. But here, the hardware is the human brain. The latency isn't in some fiber optic wires, it's in the ego. It's the psychological delay caused by doubt, fear, overthinking, just basic biological self-preservation. To run this OmniAware class efficiently, the system absolutely has to remove human hesitation from the picture entirely. And here we have it, the execution command. Self.bypass_ego latency equals true. Driven by that wild embedded comment we saw earlier about shifting processing to high-frequency gamma waves, this little Boolean variable is the trigger. By setting this to true, the script forcibly bypasses the frontal lobe's normal deliberate decision-making process. It literally removes the self from the equation, so the user can have pure, unfiltered, instantaneous interaction with their quantum-entangled environment. So what does this all mean? We've seen exactly how this artifact bridges math, theoretical physics, Gnostic wisdom, and neurobiology. It's a literal blueprint for how a user might physically code reality by entangling their consciousness with the universe. But it leaves us with this incredibly profound, honestly chilling final thought. If a script actually manages to set bypass ego_latency to true, and the biological bottleneck of the self is entirely wiped out so it can process infinite fractal data, what is actually left of the user? I mean, when the ego is gone, who or what is actually running the code? Think about that for a bit. Catch you next time.